All right, so Kyle, I've seen you here on this X Twitter space for a while, and you're one of those individuals that stand out because you have a tangible business. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation, learn more about you. And one of the topics I'd say is going to be is the scaling in business, and specifically hiring people to scale in business. So before we kick it off, and correct me if I'm wrong, you founded Hire UA, where you help businesses to hire and outsource to Ukrainian people, which is already super unique because you're not just focused on the stereotypical locations of outsourcing. You placed in over 500 companies' talent. You had a team of 2 people in February 2022, and now there's about 20 people. You also build or have involvement in an olive oil company, and you founded a blog with millions of readers. So, what is it that you would like to add to your introduction?
You did your research. That's good. Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
you nailed it all. The blog was a dating blog, and I did a lot of like SEO niche sites as well, kind of after the blog, in between the blog and the olive oil company. But for the most part, A plus for you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, cool. So, I want to start off here because for those who have their own business, mainly this in the online space, and many people who are just in their first year, the first, second year, maybe they're making their progress. The way I see it is that hiring is a great way to effectively multiply your actions. But there's a difference between hiring a VA for a couple of hours of work versus actually having full time people in your team. What is your best advice for agencies specifically to start hiring people? Like, what should they look at?
You should be looking at how you're spending your day and basically saying like, okay, this is the where 80% of my time is going. And I think most of the time with a business, like, it's the 80/20 rule in action. So probably you are spending 80% of your time not doing things that are actually driving the business. And the 20% of things of your time, it would probably get you 80% of the results. So I think it's really important to say like, what am I constantly doing again and again that is low leverage? Now, if you're just starting out, I would argue, for example, that like client success is a high leverage thing because you want people to have like white glove VIP service. You want
Yep.
them to be blown away. You want to get testimonials, case studies. So at the beginning, that is high leverage. Once you've stacked, say, 10 of those and you have lots and lots of clients, it may not be the most high leverage thing you can do. So in an agency, digital setting, most of the time, it's fulfillment. Where if you can outsource, let's say you do email ecom marketing, right? It's the design of the emails or it's writing the copy or whatever it might be. So instead of you doing all of the design of the email, you hire a designer and they do the first part of it and you make it look pretty at the end. You put the finishing touches on it. So I think that's when you're starting out, that's what the angle that you should be taking on that.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's excellent advice. And I really like that you're bringing up this Pareto principle because there's nuances and that plays always a case, right?
And to add on to that, Steve Jobs, I think, had it really good, which was 10/80/10. And basically, like, take an email, for example. So you hire a designer, they're lower level, but you're getting your time back. So you sit down with them and you give them the idea, the concept, the first 10%. They do the actual work. That's the 80%. And then you come in at the end and do the remaining 10%. And that still adds up to 80/20. And that is how like Steve Jobs did a lot of products at Apple. He would be involved in the first part, he'd get the vision off the ground, and he'd say, you guys go do your thing. And then he would come back in to polish on it and put his
Yeah.
touch on it.
Amazing, amazing. So, management wise, I've recently had quite a valuable insight because I was told that people mainly hire managers to keep them accountable and to bring in discipline, and more to actually be a manager to help people have a clear view of what to do day by day and actually making sure that they do it. And if we look at that perspective from being a manager self, if you want to hire people or if you manage multiple people, what do you think is the best way to bring out the most of that, to bring out the most of someone you hire?
So the best way to bring out the most in someone that you hire. So first off, like managers have a really bad reputation in like corporate world. Everyone knows the stereotype. Middle manager, 50 something years old, hasn't really accomplished much, gets off on basically browbeating everybody. Like, so that when you're building an agency, you want to be lean. If you need to hire a manager, like you are the manager for your first few hires, obviously. As far as making sure that they do it, you want to put people in a position to succeed and you just want to be crystal clear about what you actually want them to do. So it's spelling it out, it's giving proper training, and then it's also having a specific accountability structure, which is probably a daily report to show what was done, as well as tracking very clear KPIs. So way too often it's a matter of, oh, I wanted this person to do this. Like, great. Did they know it? No. And they don't. Like, and this has happened to me before too. Like, did you know you were supposed to like hit this number? They're like, no, I had no idea. I'm like, oh, well, that's on me then. So the biggest thing is to reverse engineer everything. If you want to hire someone to do lead generation, how many people do you need to reach out to? How many replies do you need to book a call? How many calls to close a deal? And you just reverse engineer it and you start looking at how long these actions take. And you say, okay, new lead generation person, I expect you to outreach 50 people a day. I expect that your messages are good enough that you get 10% to respond. I expect you to book 25% of those onto a call. Yep. You have this amount of time to get it right. If you don't, I'll be finding someone else, right?
Yeah. And you will almost say that it's common sense, but that clear communication is so critical. I've experienced that myself as well. Like, just being able to communicate what you expect, what you want, and stay in alignment to that is so key, because one of the things I've noticed as well is that even if you hire a certain person, you're in your momentum. You're doing this every day. Like, this is your business. You're really owning it. But somebody else, they're kind of joining you and they don't directly share that feeling. So they might be in a state where they're like a little bit uncomfortable, or they don't want to ask you something, right? So I think one of those great things there is also to have kind of like an open culture, some sort of direct communication line. So another topic, which is kind of like a buzz thing right now, is the AI thing, right? So I want to share my vision on this, and I'm very curious how you see this, because a lot of the things you see right now is hiring people who can implement AI, having AI systems, agents, and all these things. And the way I see it is that if you want to implement some sort of AI agent that's supposed to fulfill or even replace a role, you need to make sure that you're actually able to manage that role first. Like, you need to know what are the mistakes that could happen, what are some of the nuances there, and it's basically having that experience with the role in your business before you start to automate it. What's your take on that?
I tend to agree with you. I think I would admit I've been wrong about AI on more than one occasion. Like, I looked at it a year or so ago and was like, I tried to do some writing with it and I'm like, nah, this ain't it. This is never going to work. And now I look at it and I'm like, holy cow, it's better than me. So the leaps and bounds it has made quickly has surprised me and proven me wrong. And now I'm ready to be proven wrong again about a lot of things in regards to it. But I do think that it's harder to execute. It depends on what the role is. This agent, you have to train it. You have to know how to do it properly. You have to give it proper instructions. And I think with an agency, a lot of people are going to be like, they don't want their client success outsourced to an agent. They want to know that like they're talking to a person. Just like when you call your bank and you get the automated system and you have to basically go through a fight to get to someone who can actually resolve your problem. If you're a small agency with 15 clients, how do you think they're going to feel when they're going through the same thing? I don't see roles like that being replaced because people will just leave. Like, if you're a small business owner and you're choosing to spend this amount of money with this agency, if they start, on Slack, here's your AI bot, let us know what your concern is, like, they're going to say, screw you, like, it's going to take my money elsewhere. And they will, because it's not as hard as, moving banks. Like, that's the thing. Everyone sticks with the same banks because the banks are all the same. They all have the same stupid AI, and there's really no alternatives. But, a media buying agency, there's hundreds of those out there. So,
Yep.
I don't know if that answered your question, but I don't think it's going to be, I think it'll get there. It's not now. It'll be in a year. And then maybe it'll be a little bit more practical, I think.
Yeah, it certainly does answer the question, and I think it's a great insight because you're bringing out the fact that the genuine connection is important, and you need to look at what role specifically could be replaced, or have a supplement, basically.
I mean, so I run a recruiting agency. I don't see a world where I could potentially move the CSMs to AI. Maybe the scheduling, could we remove the CSM from scheduling if we were given a Calendly link and that we gave correspondence with the candidates? Could we schedule them? Probably. That would be cool. Could we have an AI that went through LinkedIn at rapid speed and found all the qualified candidates and sent them a custom message? Yeah, that sounds cool. So those kind of applicable things, I think, could be extremely powerful for agencies because I can see that working in ours as well.
Yeah. Makes sense. And this week I saw your thread about the 8-hour workday being dead. And you talked about more in the office setting that people, you for example brought up two things where people would go to the bathroom to scroll on Instagram or TikTok, and people sending out emails or scheduling emails at 5:30 in the morning to appear to be hardworking and grinding. So do you think that remote work is just a new part of life? Like, do you think that the offices, and all of that formal structure is just kind of getting a little bit obsolete?
I think it's very obsolete. I think that the boomers are trying to drag it back into existence, and at the end of the day, probably most people are not doing a better job. But companies that are smart and have hired the right people who are independent self-starters, why would they have that cost of the office? So I think it all just depends. And it needs to have nuance. So for example, I have an executive assistant who I hired here. Like, she works in the office with me 2 or 3 days a week. And that was a big improvement over my last ones that have been fully remote. Like, being able to just be right across from her and say something really quick makes it a lot easier. So, some things are nuanced, but I do think that employers have taken a lot out of people's lives. And I think that the dream hasn't come true for a lot of people like our age. So my parents, maybe your parents, like, they got to go to work, they were able to buy the house, the 2 cars, whatever. But most people these days, now there's more traffic. Now there's more congestion. Now the jobs do not pay as much. They haven't kept up. They're unable to buy a home. So I think you're going to see more and more people just saying, screw this. And if enough people tip over that, then people are going to, companies will eventually have no choice but to start offering better circumstances. Because it's pretty bad now. If you live in a major metropolitan, unless you want to raise your family in the city, like, you are probably commuting an hour each way.
Yep.
Like, it's totally normal. And that's just, when you start adding it up, it's like, oh, now you're spending, basically 11 hours a day for work. It's crazy.
Yeah, and do you see a lot that, let's say, traditional businesses are a little bit afraid to open up to this idea of working remotely? Is that something you have an insight to?
So I see all the time that we have like dentists and doctors' offices that are like, okay, maybe we can have a remote virtual assistant that handles a lot of our back-end billing or follow up with patients or whatever it may be. People would be very surprised that we have placed people into anesthesiologists' offices, tire warehouses. We have even a couple placements right now for warehouse assistants virtually. So I think, a lot more traditional businesses are going that way, and it's for positions that you wouldn't think of. Like, who would think like a tire business is going to outsource stuff abroad, but it's worked out fantastically for them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and like for me speaking, and I think a lot of people resonate with this in kind of the group where I'm in, it's like, I'm having a lot of these connections already online. I know people in so many different countries. I can travel to another place, and almost always I can just meet people because I just know them, whether it's from Twitter or Instagram or some sort of networking group. It's kind of like a whole connected world. But I also think that there's a lot of businesses out there who might be of an older age as well, but they don't have that much of a broad connection. Like, they don't have so many connections worldwide. Do you see that a lot of these people are almost like afraid to hire people from other countries and to really outsource from a place that they're not familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, like, X and Twitter it's an echo chamber, man. Like, there are people that come on calls and they're like, how would I even work with a VA, like a virtual assistant? They have like no idea where to even start. So you and I talking about it, it just seems like natural, like we've been doing this for years. But, to some 55-year-old guy who runs a plumbing business, this is a totally new frontier. And for example, I have a new B2C coaching company because we realize there's a lot of people that want remote jobs. And we, signed a client the other day. I did his onboarding yesterday, and he's been a delivery driver most of his life. So this concept is so foreign if you go outside of Twitter that, there's still a lot of juice to be squeezed out of it, I think, because there's so many people that I just have no idea at this point.
Yeah, interesting. And what I want to talk about as well is the other side for people who are looking to get hired or looking to get their skills developed to be able to be attractive on a global marketplace. If we look at that, universal standpoint, and you notice because you've been on both sides, you've helped people get a job and you hire people. What do you think is the importance of formal education?
Non-existent other than getting your foot in the door. So if you apply for a job on LinkedIn and they have this qualification set on there that you must have a bachelor's degree, then if you don't have one and you put no, it automatically throws you into the no filter. I've never really had anyone in a professional setting ask me about my college degree. I have been an engineer. I have been like a data center admin. I have valeted cars. I've sold high-end audio equipment, and I don't think I've once been asked about my education on any level.
Interesting. Interesting.
It does not matter other than for getting past the filter. Now, if they run a background, you see, that's the thing though. You can't lie about it, because if they run a background check, which if they're worth their salt, they would pretty much instantly figure that out. So yeah, that's all just kind of part of the system though.
Yeah.
It's go get the degree, pay your money, and then you have to take this crappy job commuting an hour away because you have to pay off $100,000 and you're 22 years old.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way out in Europe, thankfully, but like that is a very real situation for a lot of Americans in their 20s.
Yeah. And it's great that you touched on Europe, because from what I've seen, people here specifically in the side of East Europe, a lot of them are attracted by the idea of going to West Europe, right? They believe formal education is the way to go. But I personally think whether you're from Bratislava or from Berlin, you can always develop yourself by actually going through that path of online business. It doesn't necessarily have to be online, but just doing education outside of the formal ways, right? You can even have some sort of local institutions who offer courses in an evening, or just trying things from YouTube. I always think that there's so many different ways to expand on the regular limits that you're supposed to go to. So that's definitely something I want to share as well. And just to touch on our last few things here, one of the things we said in the beginning is your blogging experience. I'd love to learn more about that, because I'm very curious. If we look at it from a marketing subject, what are some of these successful elements you see in blogging?
So rewind about 10 years ago, and I was a guy who really didn't understand women at all. And I stumbled upon the correct blogs that taught me, and I decided I would document my journey for other people to see me coming up from the struggle. And it was genuine. I was 21 years old. I had a very good, well-paying job, and I really just wanted to write and share. And a couple years later, I was doing like 1 million unique visits a year to the blog. And it was just by luck. I mean, it was just me truly sharing the journey from scratch and talking about every single horrible part of it, all the highs and lows. And that was my first little business. It was built without any intention of ever being a business. And then I realized that it could actually make some money, and I started monetizing it, and that has led me to where I am today, which is, several businesses at this point. But from a marketing standpoint, it was so powerful because at the time, attention spans were a lot better. So if you actually were able to sit and write and you were consistent, like it really showed. But that's like the biggest thing I would note, is that like the consistency is what paid off. It was blogging almost every day for several years. You eventually built it up. And I would argue that even though the attention spans are worse, like if you go and you post consistently good stuff and you put your heart into it every day on Instagram or X or whatever for 3 years, like, yeah, you will break through eventually. So I think people give up too quickly. And I also think people are, like the big thing now is just AI. It's just too easy to put out generic crap. But if you actually share the journey and the struggles, like people will relate to that. But it is a lot harder than it used to be. Those algorithms are not as kind. They want virality as opposed to sustenance. So it's changed a lot. But definitely that direct connection is powerful. And I still have readers and people who buy stuff from that to this day on my email.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Super interesting. And one of the things I want to give you credits for as well, because you do this super good, is you're leveraging case studies extremely well. Is there something you can share about that as well? Because I think it's going to be super helpful for other people.
Here's the dirty little secret. You actually just get results. So I've hired a few external agencies for lead gen, for marketing, for video, like tried a variety of things, a variety of people, and most of the time it has been average at best and horrible experiences at the worst. So most people are used to just being burned by agencies, like absolutely torched. And, you know, Daniel Fazio says this a lot, but if you're selling B2B and you're asking someone to invest $5,000, they are not hoping to lose money. They are hoping to get 3 to 5 times that investment. They are not just hoping to break even. They're hoping to get a multiple on that. And it is completely reasonable to expect them to get that return on the investment, or you should give the money back. Like, you know, if you buy a pizza, you buy a pizza at the restaurant and it comes out and it's upside down and it's already like the cheese is all falling off, you'd send it back and you'd get a new pizza.
Yep.
Or you'd get your money back. And so people just have this insane expectation that a successful business owner is going to just throw them money and if it doesn't work out, it's just okay. So that is, it's really a boring answer, but we actually get really good results for people. And then they want to talk, they're happy to talk about it because most recruiting agencies don't. Most agencies don't. Most businesses do not actually get results for people.
Yep.
So honestly, I mean, that's the best thing I can say is that if you get results, people are usually pretty happy to do you a favor and talk about it. It doesn't really, like, we just ask.
Yeah. It's so powerful. I always say as well that the best sales hacks is who you are as a business, who you are as a person, and how that is presented. And having direct results and case studies and social proof is extremely powerful, because if you are able to put people on your website who you've worked with, you can show their faces and they might be established people as well. You can kind of associate yourself with that. But moreover, you don't need that much of different results. But if you do have a lot of results to show for example, for one person, it already makes it real, right? So I think that's kind of a disconnect what a lot of people have, because they spend too much time on documenting their ideal scenario without having the actual results. So it's good that you touch on that.
And honestly, just to add something else to that too, like the more you get, it's really easy when someone comes on a call and they have objections over whether you're going to deliver. And let's say that they're an e-commerce store wanting to hire video editors to help produce UGC content. It's really helpful if you say, oh, here's this e-commerce company that we hired a video editor for who produced UGC content, and we did it in 5 days, and they say they're saving about 30 grand a year. When you can sit there and pull that up on a call or send it in a follow-up email, like it makes everything a lot easier, because they're like, oh, they've literally done this for a company like ours that had the same exact problem.
Yep.
It's an easy way to get over the objection.
Yeah, and I'm also curious because going to the next level for a lot of us is like the idea, the vision of having multiple businesses. Now, since you have Hire UA, since you have the Oil of Oil and the new agency you're starting, things like that, is your best advice to dominate where you can first, like really master a certain business first, and then try to expand, or should you more grab the opportunities that are presented? How do you see that?
Yeah, like people are like, oh, I want multiple income streams. It's like, dude, your first income stream is like $2,000 a month. Like, why don't you try to get that up a little bit before you worry about a second one? Yeah. So what I can do and say is that everything in my business path logically made sense and built on what I had. So I had the dating blog. It worked out well. I got good at SEO. I built a bunch of niche sites. I sold a couple of them. A reader from my blog came to me and asked me to do the marketing and advertising for the olive oil company. That's how I co-founded that. So he was a reader of the blog, saw my SEO, saw my marketing. We started that company. I sold most of it back to him. And then Hire UA started because I was living in Ukraine and I had hired someone to help me. And I had a couple friends that said, hey, she seems pretty good. Could you do that for my business? I said, oh, well, I've never done it before, but sure, why not try? And then that built and that built and that built. And the new company, Our Work, only came about because as we were running ads for Hire UA, we started getting people opting in saying, could you get me a job? So this is now related very much to Hire UA. It's just serving a different market. But yes, everything has built on itself. And had I not focused on Hire UA to go start some other thing a few years ago, then Hire UA wouldn't be where it is. And now it's at the point that I have the time I can step away and do, building something on the side.
Yeah.
But like, for example, even though we are a multi-million-dollar company, if this was a totally different business, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be focused on this. But this is in parallel.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, like so now I'm making content about remote work. Commuting sucks, get a job. That's going viral, which gets more eyes from random business owners who then can dig in and see, oh, he's also posting about building remote teams. So that's my new tagline. I just came up with it yesterday, was helping people build great remote teams and giving people the job of their dreams. So
Awesome,
now
yeah.
our work, the B2C offer, will have more virality, which will get more eyes of actual business owners. So it'll all
Yeah.
just build off itself now.
It's one big ecosystem, and that's great advice because you're building on top of what it is you're doing, and it feeds into each other, right? It's one
Yeah.
ecosystem. So, I have a final question for you,
Yeah.
but before I go into that, is there anything else you want to touch on? Anything else you want to share?
No, these are great questions.
Okay, so what would you say does the next level look like for you?
I would like to get the company to the point where I am like out of the day to day. I think I have that person who could do it, where I am CEO or whatever title in there, the president or their CEO, whatever titles we want to put on it. And it's like I check in once a week or once a month.
Yeah.
Like that would be the ideal, that they have that ability to make all the decisions, to hire the people, and to run the company. And then all my time is freed up. And at that point, you either have a very powerful asset that you can, sell on the open market, or you have a pretty solid passive income stream.
Yep.
So that's the next level for us. I'm working on it, but it's a whole different game than going from 2 to 20. And then
Yeah.
outsourcing more and taking more off your plate. It gets harder and harder. You just I was actually talking to someone the other day, and basically, like, it's now on legendary difficulty. Before it was normal, and you just keep upping the difficulty, and you deal with bigger problems. But now all the smaller problems are much easier to solve, but they don't go away. But now you just have much bigger ones, and they only get harder.
Yeah, that makes sense. And great stuff, man. And I think we had an extremely great conversation. I think it was super insightful as well.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you for your time, and for everybody checking in as well. Thank you for checking in.
Thank you.